Hi, in this video I want to discuss an analogy and how people's expectations of what is and isn't true and based on probability laws about how existence came to be and how that can get in the way of their reasonable expectation of what is true and what isn't true and how that can affect just how much they feel like they can believe in a world where there is only so much that it can move around and only so much that can happen. A lot of people want to believe that the world's very unlikely. Things happen to be so unlikely that they just happen to be happening the exact way that they're happening right now. But based on cause and effect, obviously it deems it so based on past events. Why are things the way they are now? Why is something so unlikely? Why are we looking at it as if we're looking at it um, coming in to something as opposed to something that's already there? Something that's already there based on the expectation is one to one. Obviously, we're one to one. We don't need to look at a world where we're finding the possibility that, oh, the food could have landed on some other plate when the food was already on the plate to begin with, or you were putting it right on the plate and the likelihood of it going to any other plate was unlikely. This is an issue of fundamental expectation and a confusion of ideas based on a religious doctrine that makes people believe that there's some kind of unrealistic possibility that something existed or something should exist, when in reality it either exists or it doesn't exist based on things that have happened or that have not happened. It's only your deluded psychology that's making you believe that something else is possible. Yeah, nothing else is possible other than what's happening. And it's only us using this in whatever way we can to realize or discover possibilities of something else existing that we don't already know, some kind of other key detail that we feel like we're missing, just to finish off and seal the deal, or figure out something that we don't necessarily understand. But obviously there's nothing so unexpected that we can't already um, that we don't already know the foundations of, to be exact. But yes, there's no unreasonable possibility because everything's already happened a certain way and we're just following based on that possibility, and we happen to exist just because we happen to exist, because the possibility deems it so. There's no unrealistic possibility of us existing. We just happen to be a product of the cause and effect universe that happen to exist in a certain way, because otherwise it would be different. And who's to say different would be so wrong? Maybe different would be better. Just because we are the way we are now doesn't mean that it wouldn't be better. Sort of like expecting some kind of intelligent being to know some kind of greater intelligence would be have to come to any other conclusion. Who's to say that they wouldn't know anything else than you already know? Who's to say they didn't already reach a conclusion? Who's to say that the conclusion was not the exact same conclusion that we're reaching right now when it comes to the objective view of reality that we're looking at? Who's to say that any of that stuff wouldn't be the same exact thing that we're doing right now? Who's to say they would have reached a different conclusion? Yeah, only the people that want to make it seem like that would be a possibility, leaving it open for interpretation, as if that was the reason that they'd make such a comparison. There's no reason to make those comparisons because the comparison is completely ill-placed, and it's only there to make the expectation more likely as opposed to less likely. But even then, they have to realize that that possibility is only marginally conceded when you realize that it wouldn't maybe, yeah, the possibility of something greater intelligent, but greater intelligent what? Will they come to any other conclusion when it comes to the realistic expectation of expectation? I like using that, of a zero-sum game. Will they come to any different conclusion, realizing what it is, saying it's worth suffering just to get some desired satisfaction based on your addictions that you have? Who's to say that they would come to any other conclusion? You're the one making an assumption that they would come to a different conclusion, and you'd say otherwise. Well, why would we assume that there wouldn't be any other intelligent beings? Why assume so when we don't even know if there's any other intelligent beings to exist in the world or not? Obviously, there's a lot of assumptions based on these things, and not to say assumptions can't be good sometimes. I mean, sometimes those are the things that lead you to the correct answer, but sometimes those assumptions go a little too far, and they don't really lead you anywhere except to a dead end. And that's where exactly they're leading you right now, because you're assuming on top of assumptions. You only make so many assumptions before it becomes invalid to any reasonable reason to believe something that's based on so many mountains of assumptions. Um, but yeah, we're not living in a world that can be measured up based on probabilities. We're living in a world based on probabilities and things happening based on those probabilities in one way, and that's based on cause and effect, and those things are just performing out their function based on the cause and effect mechanism that's controlling the way they are, and who's to say they wouldn't be any better, any worse? Who's to say they would happen any other way? But they're happening a certain way, and that's exactly what we're living through. If it would have happened differently, we would have experienced something else. Just because something's happening doesn't mean it's the best possible outcome, and that's somehow being conflated with the issue that, yes, it happened just perfectly for this to happen, just for us to exist. And who's saying that we exist is a good thing? That doesn't mean it's a good thing. We're looking at the water moving around in the cup. We're not looking at how the water got in the cup. Maybe because the water was already in the cup. How it magically just splashed into the cup in such a perfect way is irrelevant. We're looking at what's just splashing around in the cup right now. And that's exactly what we're doing. And guess what? Regardless of it splashing in the cup or not, it happens to be in the cup and we're following that exact course of action. Just because the splash existed, regardless of where it came from, doesn't mean it's special. It just means it happened to be a certain way. And I think it would be just as special if we didn't exist here as if we did exist here. If we didn't exist here as we do now when we do exist. Only that we have to deal with the issue of our biological functions and our psychological functions and our psychological ailments, and to be satisfied, and all these other issues that we have to deal with. And that's the only extra piece of value that we can add to this mechanism, but it's only valuable because we're here to experience the value. Otherwise, we wouldn't need to experience it. So that's why that goes back, obviously, to questioning is if it's rather a good thing or not a good thing to experience this thing to begin with, because who's to say it is? Who's to say it wouldn't be any better or worse otherwise? It would be better otherwise if we didn't exist, but just because we're here doesn't mean it's special. We happen to be existing in the moment right now where it happens to exist, and that's more than enough of an expectation to understand that there's nothing else happening. We wouldn't be here otherwise to have the expectation of us not existing. We'd only have the expectation that it's rare that we exist because we're here and we're just existing. There's nothing more, there's nothing less. We exist, and we happen to think that our existence is special only because we exist, and the existence isn't special. We exist, we only think it's special because we exist, and we're attributing some kind of unlikeliness to it based on the fact that there was other possibilities happening. But we're living in that existence right now, and otherwise we wouldn't be living in it. We'd be living differently, or we wouldn't be living it. So otherwise, regardless, there's no greater expectation of some kind of unlikeliness to this existence or to things happening, because we realize that things could happen differently. They just happen to happen a certain way within the laws of physics and reality that we're living in right now. They could have happened a different way, but they happen to happen one way based on cause and effect, but they could have happened another way based on the fact that the physics allow such a thing, or the ability and the reality that obviously it's very unlinear, but it's very linear when you look at the very basics. The illusion of free will or unlinearity of something like that, it's not something that really exists. But the possibility of those things, based on the fact that they can happen looking forward, at least from our psychological perspective of evolution, looking at how things can happen in different ways, it's a possibility that these things do happen in certain ways. It's only the clock that they're working on, or the story that they're being abided by, or the script that they're being controlled by, is controlling that very mechanism. But obviously, you'd say things working exactly in the clockwork way that they're working would mean that obviously that the mechanism of cause and effect, allowing it to happen a certain way, would be part of that very mechanism, and that very may be true. But obviously, the possibilities are elsewhere, especially from at least an illusionary standpoint. That obviously the choice would only matter if we're here to make a choice, or the cause and effect would only matter as if we're here, as if our minds are the only thing causing cause and effect, or the illusion of some kind of choice, as opposed to the reality itself having no real inherent choice, because things are just following their path regardless of us existing or not. So anyway, there's nothing so special about our existence. We're existing in exactly the ratio of 1 to 1 that we've always been living in. If we weren't here, there would be no expectation of us, because we wouldn't be here having an expectation of some kind of unlikeliness of us existing, because we already exist. We have to say we exist because of what reasons? How do we exist? How unlikely is it? Well, it's not unlikely because it happens to be exactly what it is. It's a good probability, possibility. It's a good test to maybe figure out functions of other aspects of existence, probability and possibility, based on other things within that possibility or that probability realm. But the probability and possibility of us existing, especially explaining something that's happening right now exactly the way it's happening, saying that is synonymous with just saying things are happening exactly the way they're happening because they're happening a certain way. So expecting any other answer and just saying the probability of 1 out of 10 is obviously 1, or a tenth. But the possibilities there and the probabilities there, obviously, rolling a dice, what's the probability of getting these combinations of numbers? You can obviously go down to that, but once it exists, and you've already got that probability, and like the discussing something that's happened in the past, it's already happened, therefore it's not a probability issue anymore because it's already existed. And we're part of that existence, and we're just rolling with that and expecting, and almost as a part of our psychology being a byproduct of that very thing that's happening, as a part of cause and effect that's leading us forward into the future. So there's nothing really spectacular or magical here. It's just part of the function. We're already moving with a function, we're expecting with a function, and we're living based on expectations of this function, expecting something greater when in reality there's no great rareness to us or unlikeliness to us. It's just exactly the way it's moving. Anyway, that's all I want to say on the subject. There's nothing really else I need to say. It's a very easy thing. You just gotta follow it to its um, conclusion, and then you realize a lot of these things are very simple and they're very easy to understand. And not to insult anyone's intelligence, obviously. Anyway, that's all I need to say. So if I have to mention anything else, there's always next time. So thank you, and until next time. Bye.